for breathing. And I'm going to take out the bubble wrap inside so I can slide this out a little bit more easily. Now there's a bracket on the side of the unit, and the other parts of the brackets will be in a little bag. Put those to the side. And when you take this out, it might catch a little bit on the box, so you might want to push the box out, or just kind of take it easy. Now there are two handles on the top. There's one here and here, and those are what I'm going to use to lift it out of the box. Get my power cord out too. It's not super heavy, but you might have to kind of wiggle it out, especially when it catches on that bracket. Okay. And then you can take your styrofoam off. And now we'll go through how to put it together. Your little torch is here. Make sure that when you take out your styrofoam, you look for the funnel. It'll be in the side of the styrofoam, and you're going to need that at some point. So make sure you keep your funnel. All right, so let's go through how to put this together. So let's go through each part and make sure you have everything with your unit. So this is the main unit. These were the brackets that I was talking about that stuck into the cardboard a little bit, and this bubbler will sit on there, and you will take out these screws, which I'll show you in a moment, and then clamp on the bubbler like that. So you should have two of these brackets that came with it. The funnel, which I mentioned earlier, and that's to put in the solution at the top, the catalyzer. Then you've got your secondary bubbler, and that's your welding attachment if you want to do some welding. Then you should have a mask with it. We'll call it a breathing mask. And your power cord, and then a connection hose as well. So make sure you have all of the different pieces before we get started. This is your primary bubbler, and this is where the first level of gas is produced, and that is going to connect with this tube into your secondary bubbler. And I'll go through each one of these things as we put it together. So the first thing you'll want to do is take out the 4 screws. So you'll need a Phillips screwdriver to open up the screws. You could use a flathead too. They're kind of a combination screw, so you can use either one. I prefer Phillips because it fits in there and stays in there. So I'm going to take out all 4 of these screws. And I'm going to set my bubbler in about like that. And then take the first clamp, put it around the side, and screw it back together. You don't have to over tighten these or anything. It's just to keep it from moving around. Just so it's nice and snug. Okay, so I can feel it kind of pressing on there. That's all it has to be, so it doesn't move. And then this unscrews off of here. And we slide that onto the tube. And then this goes over the top of that little nipple, like that. Just kind of wiggle it on there to where it goes all the way on until it stops, and then you can screw this back on. And you'll feel it kind of snug up as well. And just finger tight is fine. Okay, so that's 1 and 2. So next we have our final bubbler, and this piece screws on to this extra little connection here. I'm going to take this tube off because we're going to connect it up with the other bubbler. And so this just basically screws onto that. So you can either screw this down or screw this up counterclockwise and this clockwise, however you want to do it. And then this part connects up with that, coming from the secondary bubbler into the final bubbler, like that. Okay? Then we're ready for the mask. And I've always noticed that these plastic things smell a little bit, so you might want to open it up right away when you get your unit and let it sit out for a day or two. They kind of have a medical smell, which I don't like too much. So that presses on here like that, and then your mask has a little nipple on it too, and that presses on there. Okay, we are ready to go. And next we'll fill up the catalyst in here. And now in here, you want to fill this line. When you're filling up the catalyst, fill it right up to this line, not any further than that line right there. And we'll go through all the safety precautions and everything of doing that. And then in here, you want to have distilled water. And you want to fill it up to leave some room for air bubbling. So maybe fill it up about to there, just below the bracket a little bit, so you can have a little air space. And same thing on here. You want to fill that up to about there, so there's room for air to bubble through the water. And you want to use pure distilled water. Now, some of the bubblers came with a side vent instead of the top vent. So in order to put that on, you take your cut-off end of the tube and you just slide it on there, as opposed to the top vent like this one. So now we're ready to add our catalyst. So I have the 10% sodium hydroxide solution, and I'm going to pour that in. Into the funnel. And you want to kind of watch your level of how much you're putting in. So there you see my level is starting to come up. I'm at the very bottom line. I've used about 4 cups on the initial fill so far just to get to the bottom line. So I want to fill it right to that normal water line there. There we go. So that was almost 6 cups the very first time. Now you notice I have gloves on. This is sodium hydroxide is caustic, so you do need to be careful with it. Take precautions, have some hand protection. You might even want to wear some goggles when you're doing this, just in case anything would splash. So that's good. We're done with that one. And put the cap back on. Now this bottle unscrews from the bottom. So you just kind of hold onto the top and unscrew it counterclockwise. And this is the first bubbler. And it has a line here. You want to fill that up to about that red line there with pure distilled water. Best not to use reverse osmosis water because you don't know the actual purity of it unless you're really a water expert. But if you get good distilled water, then you'll know that you've got good, clean water. Not just clean, but absent of any minerals. So I filled that right about that line right there. I'm going to put that back on, screw it up. Okay. And this one, I'm going to fill the same thing. Distilled water. And you want it about 1/2 inch below the bracket, right about there. That looks good. And now this one, basically, this is the one that you're going to drink. So you could put drinking water in here. You don't really have to have distilled water, but you could. And I think I'll go get some regular spring water and put in there. So I've filled the water up to about here, which is fine. You could probably even go a little bit higher, but that's just fine. You don't want too much in there for it to blow back through your mask. Make sure that the air intake, the bubbles coming from the Brown's gas, goes into the top of the unit, and then your breathing mask comes off the side. So you can set your timer. I'm going to set it for 15 minutes, and then I'll go ahead and turn it on. So you see we have bubbles coming up here into the initial one. Of course, there are bubbles coming in here too, but you can't see them. Then they go into here, and then they go in here, and then you can put on your breathing mask and then breathe Brown's gas if you choose to do that. And that's really all there is to it. It's a pretty simple setup, just one step after another, and the system will work for many, many years. Now, if you want to make sure you're producing Brown's gas, one of the things you could do is connect the torch, and it connects directly to this little tank here. So you can turn it on. We'll just go 15 minutes. And give it a little gas and light it up. I'll have to give it a minute. There we go. And you've got a nice flame. And that way you know you've got real Brown's gas coming out of it. So it's taking the water and from the catalyzer and turning that into a gas that you could do things with, like cut metal and do different things with it.